right, welcome to the Prospect Podcast. Quick turnaround from yesterday to today. We were on last evening, and we have a great guest, Craig Kolek, which we're really excited to talk to about. We're going to talk about not your physical performance, but we're going to talk about your mental performance, mental health, and the things that go into increased performance from that standpoint. We're really excited to talk to Craig, but before we do that, we have Coach D, as always. He's right there in the middle. We're excited to always have him on, as always. And he, by the way, sets up the 99% of these of the guys we get, which is really, really good, in order to get these diverse group of people that we have on. And diverse, I don't mean culturally diverse, even though we do have culturally diverse, but I mean diverse from all different types of fields and sports, which is really what makes it great. And of course, I'm Coach Schumann. So, Craig, it's great to have you on. We're excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I was talking. I was actually talking to my sister. I called her earlier this morning before I talked to you, Coach D, because she worked.
That's okay then. Because listen, we ain't making her wait. Hell no.
No. But I had it because she worked at the University of Tennessee back when Lane was there, and it was funny because those texts came out, and I said it over, and she was just laughing. Because she thought it was so funny because it's two things. We're like, college football, anything goes. Number one, as long as you don't like kill someone, steal, gamble, have an affair or anything like that, you're probably in good shape. But as a coach, outside of major crimes and infidelity, you're probably good.
Yeah.
As long as
even infidelity might get you a new job. That's probably better than the last one. So who knows?
Yes. Well, but as long as you're winning ball games. So we were chuckling about that because she worked with Lane, and she said as soon as you called me, I thought you might be telling me something. Yeah, I said he's a great fit for LSU because at Louisiana, and Ole Miss, they might be like, exploitation owner, old money, and they're like, hey, be nice to my daughters. At LSU, you got a guy who just came out of from the swamp fishing, has 3 teeth, and he's going to introduce you to his beautiful daughter. He would be shocked that she's beautiful, and he's going to say, please marry my daughter. So that would be he'll fit in perfectly down there in Louisiana. But Craig, it's great to have you on. We're excited to talk mental performance and really dive into those things. If you could go into your background and kind of how you arrived at what you do. You have a fantastic following on social media, really, really good following, where you're doing a lot of great stuff on there, I'm sure, as well in your practice. But talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. So originally, I've been a collegiate volleyball coach for 3 decades, and I stopped collegiately coaching 2 years ago and jumped into this realm full time. So when I first started coaching, I was young, and everything was about skill based, but couldn't figure out why my teams were struggling and why kids were struggling. So I kind of just dove in more about learning about the mental aspect of things. So everything that I teach today has basically been tried on my alumni, from my college experiences starting about 15, 20 years ago. With all the exercises and routines and strategies that I have, they've all been tested through those guys. So it's helped me kind of build up a bit of a following where I'm able to relate to volleyball players specifically and be able to teach this aspect of the game as well as the skill piece. I've also been a collegiate athletic director for 20 years. So I've been able to take what I've learned with all of this stuff and apply it to all different teams. So individual sports to team sports, everything has kind of been able to kind of wrapped into one package, but it's very specific for each team, for each individual. And it just allows me to help athletes get past what's holding them back so they can reach their full potential, have confidence in life, have confidence in what they're trying to accomplish, in and out of their sport.
It's that's a phenomenal career. So let's dive into the coaching aspect first. What was I love that you used your kids as guinea pigs.
Yeah,
So
we all do it. It's the best.
we all do it. At least we all do it. At least you admit it. So that's the good thing. That's a good thing about it. We
100%.
and Derek knows my son is my personal guinea pig that I experiment a lot of things. Try to improve on things that we didn't do when I was a kid. But
I get a lot of remarks back from my alumni, even my old alumni, like 45 years. They're 45 years old, and they're like, "Well, that sounds familiar." When they see different things that I post. And stuff,
Yeah.
so.
They're like, "Oh, that's what that was called. Well, that's why you did that." Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And you know what? I think I want you to really dive into this. Coaching is experimental. Like as much as there's science behind the physical performance part of it, and mental performance, because there's a lot of stuff coming out with CNS and what taxes that and those kind of things, which is great. But there's a part that you're going to talk about, which is the part that we can't really completely measure yet. And there's things that we can measure on it, but what's exactly going on in that brain? And that's what makes human beings so fantastic, is that I don't know exactly what Craig's thinking or what Derek's thinking right now. Like I think I might know what they're thinking, but I don't, I can never fully know what they're thinking, and they can never fully know what I'm thinking. And I think that's the beauty of it, because you're trying to unlock in performance something to get something great out of somebody. And there might be times when you're giving your greatest speech of all time, and that person's thinking about Derek likes to say this. His girlfriend just broke up with him last night. You know what I mean? Or her boyfriend broke up with her the night before, and you gave the greatest speech in your life, and they turn around and go, "Coach, can you repeat that?"
Wait, what are we doing today?
Yeah.
So talk about that, and talk about what you were going to dive into about, like, what, your athletes and what you learned from that aspect.
I think for me, a lot of it's kind of like what you just said. Like, awareness is the biggest piece. A lot of times as coaches, I've done the same thing. Like, we'll yell at them to focus, but then we don't really explain how to get them to focus, or what focus means, or what it looks like, right? So but then we get upset that they're not focusing, even though we're not taking the extra step of showing them how can you focus, different ways of focusing. So that was the biggest thing that I kind of learned at a young age, is that just like a skill, as far as a physical skill, trying to teach them how to do a certain skill, you got to do the same thing as far as how you want them to do certain non-physical skills, certain mental skills. And so having them gather awareness, just like the physical skill, like, okay, you're not doing this skill right. You're pointing it out. Here's what you're doing wrong. And then you develop a strategy or a system or a routine that they can do to work on. Right. And so you just translate the physical stuff into that mental aspect of things. You can do the same thing with how to be a little bit more confident, how to have more focus, how to compete more, how to prepare more, how to set goals better. Like, just explaining things a bit more, especially to today's generation, is huge.
Oh.
Right. Well, like when you sit there and you're talking to a group of kids, and a kid's looking off in a different direction, and you tell them to focus on you, and you have to explain to them that when you're looking at me, you can have a better chance of understanding the information that I'm imparting to you, as opposed to when you're looking at the trees over there, right? So
Right.
it's easier to process it from that standpoint. Now, having said that, there are kids that have things like ADD that actually, when they're looking at you, they're not focused, right?
Right.
So, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's come out in that aspect, right? Like, you say to a kid, "Look me in the eyes," who has ADD, and that does not mean he's processing anything that you're explaining to them.
Right.
So I just read a whole article on that because I happen to coach a lot of young kids now. I usually was a high school coach for 20 plus years, but I coach youth kids now, and my son's group, and there are kids that have some of those, maybe not as far as ADD, maybe some do, but just paying attention issues, and you have to try and reach out to them a different way. And I think that's a big part of it. And I'm certain in high school it's still a major issue with kids that have some sort of I don't want to say learning disability, but they have a different ways of learning, right? And they process things differently. Like I kind of used one example there. What does that look like as far as like when you have multiple different kids? And this is a much bigger thing in high school and youth. And I'm sure in college it is too, because you probably run the gamut of highly intelligent athletes versus highly gifted sometimes that are not quite the same level of intellectual capability as another person, or someone who just flat out has maybe some level of learning issue. How do you kind of individualize the focus when you have groups together?
Part of our jobs as coaches is to understand each player that we work with, right? And so that takes time, especially on big teams. You got football teams, you got 40 to 60 extra players that you really have to learn about each one individually. So it's a challenge. So one, learn about each player if you can. Two, what I've done, and this is me adjusting as well on how I've been able to kind of learn from this, is I was a big eye contact person as well. And then learning what you just said took a while. But then incorporating, okay, how about just a head nod while you're listening to me? Like if your eyes are down, you can't make eye contact, just give a little nod that you're processing. If you still can't process, then after, when we break from the group, coach is done talking, give a fist bump, say, got it, coach, or ask the question then, right? So there's ways of still elaborating and still being able to build off of that. The coach just has to have some patience with, usually it's, I'm done talking, now go do it. Now it's like, I'm done talking, but let's take an extra 10 seconds to see if everybody is on board, if everybody has figured it out, or do I need to kind of go into a little bit more for a certain individual, which as coaches, that's what we need to do.
Right. And I think if you know that going into the structure of it, right, like you can build in that little extra time if once you get to know your team, obviously, right, like certain teams need a little bit more, need a little bit less, or, certain individuals need a little bit more, need a little bit less. And for you not to kind of go and like call them out in front of everybody, right, that just adds a whole different level of understanding and comfort and all of that goes, which ultimately will kind of, that time where you would now be going over because now they didn't understand what you were saying, right? Now that kind of comes back in the back end because it's factored in. And now now you're getting true understanding, and now you can go hit the ground running. You just had to take it on front end, right? Rather than it all just snowballing before you know it. Now I got to bring everybody back in, re-talk, I got to reteach it, re-coach it. And now you're frustrated, they're frustrated. Yeah. And now that's not good for anybody. But I think that's so important with the understanding of your players on an individual basis. As a former teacher, right? Like that's why September and October were always the hardest months to teach, because you don't really know your students yet. You don't know what makes them, how they learn, what, their learning abilities or inabilities, right? Where you need to kind of supplement and do that. It goes along with your team as well. And I think that's also part of the development aspect of it, right? Like you may have a kid who, as a freshman or a sophomore, you're like, this kid just never gets it, right? And then all of a sudden, as he matures and grows and, learns other things, now all of a sudden as a junior and a senior, like he's the guy that's telling other guys what to do.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that's, and I'm sure that's a big piece of the whole, the bigger picture in general is understanding, your players on that level and watching them grow and mature. And I think assistant coaches are really not good at it either, because you're explaining to the group, but also like assistants, you guys need to be understanding and listening as well, not just overdoing kind of your thing, because now the kids are either distracted looking at you, or now they're not comfortable coming to the head coach to ask that question. Now they come to the assistant and it's, you know what I mean? Like that's a big piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Yeah. The assistant, that's a great point about the assistant coach. It's almost kind of like you got to reel them in a little bit too. Like, hey, let's make sure you're focusing on what we're saying as well, because you're going to get the questions too.
Right. Right. And usually more so than the head coach, right? Because, hey, he's the head guy. And, assistants just have that different type of relationship with, especially on a football team, right? And I'll always reference football because that's like, my forte, where the numbers are massive, coach doesn't have time to explain to 70 guys. It needs to be delegated and now trickles down to you. So when you break to your position group, you're going to get these questions. You better be able to answer them the right way, right? Or in line with how we're going to do things. And if not, kids see right through that bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like they understand when an assistant is on board or not on board, or understands or doesn't understand. And the worst thing you can do is kind of fake it, right? Like, hey, if you don't understand it, tell the kid, look, I'll get back to you, right? Like I hate when guys kind of go off and do their own tangent, but I think that's something really important from an assistant coach. Like that's your job. Your job is to relay that message and make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah, I think 2 points there, like what you just said. Like one, like just say I don't know, and then go get the answer, and then you're saving yourself so much time and trouble by saying I don't know and then figuring out and then going back to it than trying to bullshit the whole thing. Right. And the second thing, so like for me, like as a collegiate coach of volleyball, we're talking 20 kids tops, right? So big difference from what you coach. But now I work with a club, and we have 60 kids in the gym at a time, right? But the whole thing for adjustment for me is I'm teaching the coaches on how to interact with the kids and how to deal with situations, because yes, I'm going to have the whole plan, but like you said, you're the head coach. There's only so much things you can do as a head, but you have all these assistant coaches that can still get the message across. So teaching them as well, talking to them as well, and being able to get the point across with them makes your job easier.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. What about with with respect from a capacity standpoint, when you have different groups of people, large numbers of people, and you have different ways that they communicate? What are some tools they use to understand? I'll give a good example. So, before I started working in sports, I worked in a tech company, and we did business with offshore technology provider. And the first thing, I was young at the time, was like 26 or whatever, and I was working on closing the deal, and I had to meet with the guy who owned it, and he was from, I believe, was from Pakistan. Okay. Well, a lot of his workers were Pakistan, but a lot of he himself was Indian. And one of the things that they did a lot of, as far as communication wise, when I was told, hey, when he's affirming you, his head is actually going to the side like this. This is how he affirms. He doesn't affirm like this when you're in a conversation. So you know that if he's doing this, what you're saying to him, he's on board with. Versus what you're used to in America, which is this, right? And the reason why I bring it up was because sometimes kids in their own home have different ways they communicate with their parents, the people and it's not necessarily as apparent as something like that is, right? But you go in blind and you're coaching a team and you don't know all their communication styles growing up, right? So what are some of the ways that you try to communicate with them to learn their communication style, and that way you can figure out where you might be able to meet them on this or meet them on that, or you need to change some of the way that they communicate it. We used to say, like, guys put you see it all the time still in football. I can't do it because of the screen here, but when they put their hands up, like in high school, we used to
palms up. Poof.
Yeah, palms up. Like we used to have a word that I don't want to say on here for it, but when you put palms up, right, that means you're making it all about you. Okay. Now you see it all the time in sports. All the time, kids do that. But we would try to eliminate as much as possible. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. Not saying coaches don't do it, because coaches do it, right? Okay, all the time.
What are we doing?
Try to eliminate, right? Try to eliminate how often you do that, and when you do it, let them know that, hey, you're making this about you. You know what I mean? And so that's what I mean by, like, sometimes communication styles. So there are kids that have been doing that their whole life, and it's going to be very hard to get that out of them, right? But you want to make them understand, hey, every time you do that, this is the message you're portraying. I know you may not mean that message. You probably don't mean that message.
Absolutely.
But this is what everybody else will interpret it as. So we want to try to change when you're upset as much as possible, so you at least recognize that when you're doing it, what's going on, and you might shorten that process and maybe eliminate some of it. So what are some of the things you do from a communication standpoint?
Yeah, I think what you just said is recognize. So like awareness is the big word for me. When my players, especially where it's a new group every year, right? You have some new players come in, or if it's a club, you get different players that are same age that are new. It doesn't really matter, except that I want to try to figure out how can I get the best out of them, and a lot of it comes down to not the skill work. It's the body language, it's their focus, and it's their self-talk. If they can get those three things down, the skill work gets easier, the teamwork gets easier, and you see much better results. So what you just said, it hit this a perfect point, is the palms go up after a mistake, they're throwing shade at a teammate, something like that. But being able just to go over to them and say, hey, like, what do you, like, not kind of blast them, unless it's like the 20th time you're doing this.
Right.
If you go over and say, hey, like, what are you feeling right now? Like, what's going on? And if they can name that emotion, like, I'm angry. Okay. Well, do you think being angry and doing this is helping? Right. And just getting them to think about it a little bit. So how does that look to the other teammates? If a teammate did that to you, how does that look for you? How does that feel for you? Right. So if they can name that emotion, then they'll start to have awareness of, my hands went up. That means I'm angry. That means I'm throwing shade, and that means I need to put my hands down. Right. So you start to see the correction a little bit more just from that first contact with them and talking to them about it. You'll start to see it, change down the road a little bit more and more. So that part is really important. What they're focusing on, are they focusing on the result, or are they focusing on that your teammate just absolutely dove and hit the floor? Yeah, the ball went out of bounds, whatever it may be, but like, look at the effort. Like, why are we not celebrating that rather than losing the point? Right. And, so,
and a lot of that has to be done kind of, especially, like with football, it has to kind of be done on the fly, right? Because you're moving to the next play, or this is where, look, like, hey, come out for a play, right? And that's like an immediate like red flag. Now you're really like, you may have taken them from 0 to 60 just by pulling them off the field. And as they're coming off, you're getting the palms up, you're seeing the visual frustration that's going on. And it's like, hey, just take a minute, right? Understand, like, look, let me explain to you, like, this is why, and then usually you can kind of rein them back in. Now, the next step in that is, hey, I don't need you to come off the field. I can just yell your name automatically. As soon as I yell, you already know, hey, I've put my palms up. I already have this level of frustration. Coach isn't taking me out. We're just moving to the next thing. Because now in their head, they're going through almost their process of, all right, let me take myself down a notch. Let me understand what's going on. I see it a ton with, freshman to sophomore, right? When they're still kind of in that immature type of, they're not understanding of like, what am I really trying to get out of you, right? That's a bigger type of cerebral, like actions that are going on. Once you get that though, like, and they see like, wow, like everybody in the stands is looking at me, acting this way or doing these things. Or if you have another teammate that comes up to you and is like, hey, like I used to assign guys to be like certain players, almost caretaker, like, hey, when so-and-so starts whatever, make sure you go and give them a little shot, like, buddy, get back into it. When it comes peer to peer, it's so different than it is coach to peer, right? And I think that's when you have a level of, now look, it's hard to find those mature guys that can set everybody straight, they can't do it for everybody. But I just think that was always one of those key little like tidbits of like, hey, if you have somebody who you're going to have to like make sure it's like, I can only say it so many times before they're like, F coach, you know what I mean? And you don't want that, right? Because it's obviously in the good of the group. It is, but so they have to kind of, you can have some of those guys do it, and now it's okay. Like, I got it, right?
It's funny what you're saying. Like, so when I work with football players, right, and with teams, and so the way I kind of the way I explain this is that you're his binky. So I want every. 100%. I have a 6-year-old son, so like I'm in the binkies right now, right? So
I got.
So like
I'm transitioning mine out of it. Like this is the whole thing. Like so Santa's gonna take your binkies, and she's not happy about it. You know. Like,
exactly.
We got
everybody find your binky. Who's your binky? Who's gonna get you out of trouble when you're emotionally losing it? And like you're his binky. Get him out of that. Like that's it's powerful. It works. And the other thing too, like what you mentioned with the freshmen coming in, if a lot of times freshmen have the goods, sophomores have the goods. They get into a trap like, oh, I'm a freshman or a sophomore, right? So that plays with their thought process of things. They think that because there's juniors and seniors that they're better. But what you explained is exactly what makes the difference between like a high level athlete is that if I have a freshman who's just as talented as a senior, and my freshman bounces back from those mistakes quicker, he's the better athlete.
100%.
He's the one that you're going to trust more. He's the one that you're going to want on the field more because the senior's still putting his hands up in the air and still trying to figure out, who to blame and who to point fingers at.
Right. And I think that's that built-in hierarchy that we've all grown up with and whatever. And you hear a lot of those younger guys sometimes like, Coach, I'm trying to get the locker room a certain way, but I'm a sophomore and the seniors and this and that. And, it's very difficult as a younger guy on the roster to kind of like, hey, like what I tell them is, look, man, you just get like, there's going to be guys that are going to follow you and listen to what you're saying. Even as a younger guy, I say, you worry about that. The other guys will ultimately kind of play themselves out, or they'll be defunct by just numbers and majority, they'll weed themselves out because they'll be the lone soldier eventually, right? But you got to just keep doing your part. Don't overstep that boundary because, as seniors, they take that a certain way and whatever that is, but just continue to trust in it and do what you're doing. You're doing exactly what you should be. And, the fact that you're openly communicating with me as your coach as to like, this is what it is. Like, we see it. Don't worry, bud. Like we have your back. So keep doing what you're doing. And eventually like they'll fall in line. And if they don't, then they'll fall off the cliff, so it works itself out, but it's difficult, especially. And Dave, we've discussed this 1,000 times, like, that middle school, high school range where fitting in is the most important thing in the world. Like nobody wants to be, the not sitting at the cool table in the cafeteria, right? Like nobody wants to be that. It's the ultimate time in your life where fitting in and what others think is like the most important thing, especially with social media and the likes and the clicks and the, all that kind of stuff. So it's hard to be a leader. We discussed that. Like you're not going to be liked by everybody, but it's part of a bigger mental process of if you can understand who you are and then get them to understand it. Now we can all kind of work towards a common goal. That I think,
absolutely. Understanding who you are, what you want, like that's the name of the game.
And I think as coaches, we need to relay that more and communicate that more. Look, even like I know for Dave at his youth level, you know what I mean? Like there's a level of understanding that a lot of those kids, they get it, right? Like majority do get it. It's just we're so focused on the ones that don't, that it's really hard to kind of balance that moving forward, especially when we're playing sports where it's extremely emotional. Like guys don't understand, they don't know how to deal with their own emotions, and then it just comes out a certain way.
Absolutely.
The as an athletic director, kind of shifting gears a little bit, working with staff members, other coaches that are at a at a high level, right? What was your process from that standpoint? Because I'm sure every coach feels like they need more, and they always need more stuff from you per se, athletic director. And just knowing the nature of coaches and head coaches that no matter what they have, they not only they want more, they think that the other guy has more than they do for some reason. right? You laugh because you know it's true, right?
Yeah.
So they always think that
It's
the other
always
guy
a
has
compare and contrast, dude. It's always,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
Yes, and definitely
Wait,
if
this
you
guy.
have, I don't know if you had football in where you're at, but if you have football, then no doubt every one of the head coaches outside of football definitely think that, and then the head football coach feels like he needs more too. So talk about that communication process and what how does that all work with highly competitive people, right?
Yeah, I think, if you're talking about like the comparison piece with coaches, like as an athletic director, it's still the same thing you're trying to do with your players. You're still trying to as a leader, there's two things. Like you have to get your coaches from where they want to be to or where they are now to where they want to be, right? That's the first thing. That's what every coach, what every athlete wants to do. And then two, you have to gain trust. And so like those two things are the biggest things to me is as far as how you become a solid leader. And so getting coaches who have this narrow vision of their program and getting them to buy into the whole program, the whole department, the whole campus mindset, that's the challenge. And most of them want to do it, but they get they're in season and it's so tunnel visioned, like it's what it is, right? But getting them to understand too that part of their growth process is that their ideologies, sometimes they have to change a little bit, not changing the world, but just adjust. We're asking athletes to adjust. We're asking our teams to learn how to grow, how to become better leaders, and how to serve the world. But some coaches don't want to do that for themselves. So being able to incorporate that into conversations with them, it's not trying to change the world for them, but just little steps. If they can change just these tiny little things, it's massive for the entire department and their team.
Yeah, and that's I think a really, really difficult part within the culture of the athletic department.
Mm-hmm.
With all people who have different focuses, the one thing they all have in common, obviously, is that they're coaches, and they all are trying to be, in obviously the overall majority cases, the best that they can be, and they're trying to get the best out of their players.
Yeah.
And you're trying to explain how that's managed in a difficult world with respect to the high level of emphasis on winning, right? So, as an athletic director, obviously, you're judged on your coaches and their success, right? And the majority of those guys or girls or women, I should say, are focused on making sure their program is the best that they can be, and winning becomes so important, and sometimes sacrifices other things that might be going on because of that. How do you communicate those expectations at the same time that you keep them focused on high level goals for the athletic department themselves?
For me, it comes down to values. It comes down to what your personal values are, and hopefully, with good athletic departments, you have a whole mission for the athletic department, and you should have a vision each year for the athletic department. And those two things are all guided off of the values of the athletic department. So that's a lot of work for coaches and the AD to be able to incorporate these things. But as a coach individually, we all have different values. We're all taught different things. We all have different beliefs. But your values are your North Star. They're ultimately what's going to help you make the decisions when it's time to make decisions. So for me, I mean, I've won over 1,000 games. I've won 22 championships, and yes, I wanted to win, but I wanted to make sure that my values were front and center. And who I am, I had to be able to go home at night and say, like, I feel like we did a good job today, whether we won or lost, but we represented the way that my values were aligned.
Right.
And so getting coaches to get into the values of themselves and their team, getting to understand that if they buy into that, their program and their culture gets so much better and so much easier for them, really, because decisions are just pretty much black and white at times. because it's based off your values.
Correct.
But once you start blurring the lines and you don't really know who you are and what you want out of this, it's hard for a coach, because then it's like, I got to win, I got to win, I got to win. You have all this pressure on you from yourself and from higher up. It's a struggle.
What accountability things do you advise coaches and athletes too, right? If I'm trying to be on the athlete side, I think about like, okay, they're trying to be the best they can be, and they could take the X shortcut to get there, but they don't, because they stay in the path, right? A lot of times you have to deal with that with high school, with football players that will take X shortcut in order to get there, and that in the long run that puts them in a bad situation. With coaches, it's taking this player that might be really good but could end up harming your program because they've had issues other places. It's a big deal now, obviously, with the transfer portal, right?
Transfer portal. Yeah.
Right. Knowing your values. So how do you coach these individuals on things they could do to check their value system, like to be able to say, hey, you said your value system is this, like, what are some accountability things that they could do for themselves? Because sometimes you don't realize you're going off what goes off the rails. Like it would say, like, criminals don't just most criminals don't just start with a murder. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like a leap, right? Like they're going to start with a little bit of robbery, armed robbery, right? So there's got to be, I mean, unless they're just out of their minds, and we're not talking about these kind of individuals anyway. But most people don't start with just saying, "Hey, I'm gonna bring in guys who can play ball, and I don't care what they do." You know what I mean? So, how do you help them be accountable to themselves when little things might start to take them off the rails from that standpoint?
So, this would be good for you guys. Have you guys, Urban Meyer? Have you read his book?
Oh yeah.
How about you? Do you know about above the line, below the line, as far as him incorporating that, right? So what he does is he has just a line, above the line behaviors and a below the line behaviors. And it's black and white, right? So when things start to creep in, like those little things you're talking about with maybe a transfer that comes in, he's like, well, I'm kind of used to doing this, so I'm going to see if I can get away with that. It's just a simple conversation with either the leaders of the team or the coach, depending on who's going to handle it at the time. Was that action above the line or below the line as far as what our team values are? And being able to really, off the start of the season or off the start of the school year, you need to make known what the team values are. The team has to know these values. And a lot of times, like for teams that I work with, we develop the values through the players. Like we have them have a hand in it. Because now if they have a hand in it, they feel like it's meaningful to them. It's not just something like, hey, I told you need to be a nice person. Like that's, but hey, can we be compassionate as like they're saying, like, let's have compassion as one of our team values. So now they're bought into it. And so when something happens, was that above the line or below the line as far as our compassion value? And it just gets them to think more, and you get them to hold them a little bit more accountable that way.
Right. And I think like, what he used to do, and we've done it at places where you have, your little leadership crew, right? Like, you'll bring that group in, like if there's something to discuss when it comes to, whatever, and then they relay the message, or, if it does get to the level where you have to bring in individuals, right? Like they're part of it. Right. So I think that's a big piece too, especially now it's difficult at the high school level. And I've seen it change, in recent years, like probably the last 5-6 years, where look, if the older guy or the leader of the team said something, like you didn't question it, you just did it. Right. Now I don't see that so much. Like these younger cats, like they got no problem addressing an older guy, or you know what I mean, like coming back at somebody. So you really have to kind of set that standard and set those expectations in terms of, hey, if you have an issue, this is the guy you go to, and what he says will get to me, and then we'll kind of go through, almost like a chain of command. But you see it with parents now too. Like they're so quick to jump the gun. Nobody goes through a chain of command. Nobody goes to the head coach first. They go where? Right to the AD, right to the administration, right to the superintendent. Like, because with social media, everybody feels like they have a voice. They have that direct connection to whoever it is. You know, that chain of command is really difficult. I think when you instill it, though, from the jump with your program, you know, as incoming freshmen, or, you know, this is the model. This is who you go to. This is who we talk to. I think that adds another level and another layer to it, where when they feel included in the decision process, right? When you sit down with that leadership crew and you say, hey, well, how do you guys feel about this? Or how should we handle this? Now, look, there's always one that's going to say something off the wall and you're like, buddy, we ain't like, let me rein you in here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But for the most part, now when they go, again, back to full circle, peer to peer is more impactful than coach to peer or adult to child. Like, that's just, when you include them, now we can really kind of get on the same page when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
With respect to like, when people come to you to talk to you about, you know, to seek your help, what are some of the things that you're seeing most that you have to address and that you're trying to help people with?
Good question.
As far as players, I think for me, it's
still, either way, whatever you're working with most.
Yeah, I think with the players, it's still, you know, I mean, COVID was a thing, right? And it's the self-esteem, it's the communication with other teammates, it's the uncertainty of, you know, I guess the same with the comparison, the uncertainty of what others are thinking. Like, that's a real deal as far as how kids act these days. Like, what are they thinking about me? Or
how they're perceived.
Correct.
Or how they look, right? Like how they look, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's why coaching is changing.
Yep.
Like that militant, almost, you know, berating of, or calling a kid out, like,
it's gone.
That shit's
Yeah.
like, that ship's gone, dude. Like, you can't do that. I mean, look, we all understand that there's certain cultures and certain programs that can still do that, right? Like, I always reference my alma mater, small little town, North Jersey, like the head coach can still do that, right? Like, and be okay, because that's what's kind of expected, or that's, you know, it's signed off on by majority of the people, right? And you kind of understand that in this program, this is kind of what works and it's accepted, right? I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it sure as hell gets the job done. You know,
right.
You could never do that at other places. And that was that was something I had to learn, right? Because I only knew that. And then now when you go into, you know, different schools or different, you know, you have your different program, it's like, hey, that don't fly here, you know? I think that's the majority of it. The compare thing is interesting, Dave, and we bring this up all the time, right? With social media, with like, even like the recruiting aspect, guys are comparing to what they see, and the things that they see are the smallest percentages, right? And the smallest little tidbits of what's not really common, or the majority for the most part. You know, do you see that social media playing such a bigger role in that, wanting to be part of it, being liked and all that? Because that's always been a part of middle school and the maturation process. And, you know, I don't want to say the bullying, but the, you know, those kind of steps that you have to go through as a kid, like to be accepted and be part of the group and all that. Do you think social media has only added to that, along with, obviously, you know, this COVID generation that missed basically a year of that social skill interaction, cafeteria stuff, hallway stuff, right? Because they were on a computer, or they were, you know, learning remote. Because I mean, honestly, like, that's, Dave and I were together coaching through that whole beast of what it was, you know. And it was the last
year I coached high school, because
it
was the process for me at that time, and maybe the people I was dealing with as well with me. was a lot of times something I did not agree with. How they treated the kids and how, and it was the way I viewed it. You know what I mean? But I was very bothered by you asking me to play a football game after not allowing me to practice for 2 weeks. Okay. Now we wanted to play a football game because we didn't want them to not play a football game. But I was bothered by the way that those type of things were handled. You know what I mean? So,
And won the game.
Yeah. Yes. I won the game. Shows you how important coaches are. But yes, I mean, it's one of those things where, it is important that the COVID changed a lot of the ways athletes think about things, coaches think about things. And people have gone in one of two directions, I think. Like they've said, I'm not willing to sacrifice the way that my values are, and this is how I'm going to do it. And people like it or don't like it. Then there are people who have said, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, no matter what, and I don't care what anybody else thinks. And so, I mean, some of those are good values to have. Parts of it, some aren't. With athletes, it's very difficult for them to process, especially kids, in middle school, high school, even early college kids. Now you have some college kids that are grown men at 23, 24. They can't process things at that point when their brain is just about fully formed, and we got a problem.
Totally different. Yeah.
But those other ages, they can't process certain things as far as like, why am I not getting recruited by this school? Why is my coach mad at me? I'm working really hard, and yet I'm still not the starter, right? How do you work them through these little challenges that really challenge them mentally? Because sometimes they are doing the right things and it doesn't work out. Like how do you help them to understand that part of it, right? Like,
Yep.
sometimes you can do everything the right way
and
it
still
doesn't
not
work
get
out.
Yep, and that's freaking life, That's hard. That's a great question.
How do you help them through that without saying that's life? Because that's how I think about it too. But they don't process that. Like if you tell them life's going to be hard, it's when you tell like, 6-year-old, it's like, yeah. What do you mean it's hard? Like,
Coach, you don't understand. Like, you just don't get it, Coach. You don't. Come on. Like, what are you talking about? Like, buddy. They're going to forget your fries at the drive-thru. Get used to it. Like, you're not going to realize till you're 5 minutes down the road. Like, how do you deal with that, Coach?
It's all process-based, right? So we get caught up in these stats. We get caught up in the comparison game of social media. We get caught up in results.
Yeah.
And you're right. You can do, like for volleyball, for blocking, it's the hardest skill to have because you can do everything right, and it's a rebound sport. It can just go 1 inch this way and it goes out of bounds, 1 inch this way in your hand and it lands in, right? So you can be doing everything right and still not get the result you want. But if we can get them to understand the process of how you try to get the result was really what we're focusing on, and that's where the success and that's where you were really good at, or that's what you're struggling with. So what I'll have them do is let's write down everything that happened to you in a week. So every single day, let's write down 3 good things, 3 bad things, let's say. Okay. And then it's going to have multiple days in a row of doing that. You're going to start to have clues that like, yeah, I've had a bad attitude for 4 out of the 5 days. Like I yelled at one of my teammates 20 times in a day. Right. So that's like a process. Or, I didn't do the extra reps. I didn't show up early. I didn't stay late. And that's a way you can teach them when you look at it after 7 days and say like, okay, like you just kind of came to practice, you practiced and you left.
Right. You just showed up.
Extra skill, like why don't we try now showing up a little bit earlier and getting some extra reps in? Why don't we come early and talk to our teammates more and have a little more communication and get that bond, right? So you can start to have proof. You start to have evidence that you can show them that's written down. Like, this is what you've done for the week. So how do we get this better? What can we do more of? Or what can we do less complaining? Like less, what can we do more and less of?
I think that's there's two things that I like to, one is the writing it down, that process of literally taking it from your brain, putting it on paper, right? It's why so many guys, when it comes to goals and all that, say, write it down, put it on a Post-it, put it in the mirror right in the morning when you wake up and you're brushing your teeth, like you're going to see it. It's tangible. It's now on paper. To them, it's real, right? When you just say it, it's kind of just fugazi, but now it's something rock hard. It's evidence. That being said, I think when you have that tangible, something physical, to now you literally, it's there. It to them in their mind, now it becomes real. I think that takes it to a whole different level of, okay, this is something. The evidence piece, I think too, it's why, a lot of the guys that we talk to, whether there be training or whatnot, they, rank, record, and publish is like the biggest thing, right? Put it down so it's visible for everybody to see. That works with the individual as well, right? Like when you're making that list of basically, look, like when you go for a job, all right, pros and cons list, write it down, look at it, compare, contrast, right? And then you can you can form that overall plan with evidence, like things that you can see, right? If I want to run a faster 40 time, I need to be writing down every time I do something of that nature, because now I can see it. It's real. That adds a whole level of accountability, right? I think that is, the biggest piece to it. Not only is it accountable to you, but when others ask you that question, well, hey man, what are you doing to improve or to get better? Oh, well, look, here's my list. Here's what it's done. That adds, and now the person that's asking that question says, okay, they're really in this. They're writing things down.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest example I use for is artificial intelligence. You have.
Oh, Dave, there you go, Dave. AI, here we go.
Let's say you want a robot, right, to kick a field goal, right? And so you have a programmer who writes a code for the robot, right? The first kick he does, he goes backwards. So that's a sample. That's what they use for that term, as a sample. So now the programmer adjusts the code, right? New code in. Now the kick goes forward, but way right. Adjust the code. That's the second sample. Now adjust the code to that. Now it goes in, right? So it's every day that athletes go through things, the learning of things, it's a sample for them to utilize to get better for the next day. And so being able, like you said, being able to write it down, it's tangible. You look at like, this is not working what I did. So let's change this.
Yeah. When you have measurable and tangible things that you're able to measure against, it starts to, I think, pare down that world so you can keep yourself on path.
Yeah.
Because Dave, do you agree with this? Because we have access to so much, right? Like right now, like with social media and all that, there's just so much access to things. Sometimes I think the availability of so much of that creates this chaos of, there's just too much that people almost give up or they quit because there's just that much out there. They can't rein it in, right? So do you agree with the fact that, and this is kind of for both, that when you can kind of help them narrow it down to focus on these certain things or break it down into smaller groups or whatever they need to be to eliminate that, that feeling of chaos because there is so much, does that help more so in getting them to the next step to kind of continue with that process? And does that help?
For me, I look at it this way. If you're talking about the alphabet, you got A through Z, right? You have that many number of letters, or you could focus on A, B, and C. Where are you going to be most productive? Where are you going to probably see the most results? You're just fine tuning 3 things that are going to help you get better. A, B, and C. And you're not thinking about the other 29 things that are going around in your head and things that you're seeing in the world in comparison. You're just zoned in on your intentions for this week, A, B, and C. I'm going to try to do these 3 things as consistently and as best I can. And that's going to be a good week.
That makes a ton of sense. The last question I have, which might be the toughest answer. Emotion becomes a big part of everything, obviously, in sports, right? And how people perceive things because of their emotion. We're in a culture where that going off of how my emotions are is like more of a norm versus taking the time to rationally think about something. Now, in the heat of a game, there's always emotions, right? That those things always run high. How do you help athletes recognize? And this is coaches too, by the way. They're equally a part of this. And I've been overly emotional. I've been overly rational, and it's probably you probably need something in between, right? So
Yep.
how do you help them regulate their emotions so they can kind of try to think about things from so they can process things in the right manner and figure out if how they're feeling is the best way to move forward or not move forward or anything in between.
Yeah. For me, like I want them to have those emotions.
Right.
Like that's what needs to happen, right? Glad you're mad, glad you're upset, whatever, glad you're angry with me, whatever it may be. So
Glad
now,
you care.
yeah, glad you care. So now you feel that emotion. The next step is, what are you going to do? Are you going to react to that emotion, or are you going to respond to that emotion? And reacting just means you go off on it, right? You just let the emotion run wild for as long as you want. Responding means, yep, I have this emotion, and now I'm going to do the best I can to get into some kind of routine, strategy, or system that gets me back into the present moment focus that I need to go on to the next play or compete or do whatever I want to do. So it can be some simple things as far as what they say to themselves after.
Positive self-talk.
Yep. It can be a physical thing. It can be like even just like a self-talk thing. Like if coach is yelling at you, like a coach, like just remind yourself like coach cares. Like hopefully coach is telling you that he loves you or she loves you as much as he possibly can whenever he coaches. Like, so that player understands this is coming from a place of love. Coach wants me to get better. And so being able to respond to those emotions with that type of system or strategy or just a routine, it gets them out of the mindset of thinking about the emotion, and it re-triggers them back into the present moment focus. Emotions lead to motion. So, and same thing, like motion leads to emotion. So if you can take one to trigger the other, make it go in the right direction. And you just want to develop a routine with them that this is what you'll do when you notice you're angry, this is what I want you to do. And then it'll become automatic for them after they do that for a while.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And that is the thing, like emotion, like some guys make the very best plays when they are clear-headed but high on emotion, right? They're intense from that standpoint. And when channeled in the right direction, and they're able to cognitively think about, okay, this is how I'm feeling. How do I channel this in a positive direction? Sometimes you get the very best plays, and then sometimes people are in a position where emotion works against you. You know what I mean? Like there may be some position. Like I would guess, as a pitcher, right, in the major leagues, you want to have some emotion, but you can't have you have to be able to be rational to pitch every single time, each individual pitch, and be focused on doing a great job. You have to have a level of fire to it, but you can't let anything consume you, right? Because otherwise you're not going to pitch well. So there are different play, and there's probably a million areas where I guess if you play chess, you cannot let emotion at all be involved in your process, right? Literally rational thought the whole entire way is going to be the most, because if you have any emotion whatsoever that triggers your thought process, you're probably going to perform poorly, right? And so I think that's really, really it's important to understand how high a level of emotion can help or hurt you in your individual sport, position, or task that you have to do, right? And I think that's really, really, really interesting. I mean, like I look at, obviously I played at UConn. I played football there, and Coach Hurley, Bob Hurley, is the basketball coach. That dude lives on emotion and fire. and somehow, like he's able, because of his own personality, like he's able to think at high levels of emotion, right? Like what his skill set is very, in my opinion, very, very rare among coaches. Like most coaches aren't able. So if a guy says, that's good, my style is going to be like Bob, not Bob, Dan Hurley. And there's no, that's going to be hard to replicate, right? Because Dan Hurley has a unique skill set that, and life experiences, okay, that has allowed him to become a person.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Be at high emotion and think very clearly at a lot of times. Not that he doesn't get too emotional, but too emotional for him, most people would be fired with too emotional, right? They wouldn't be able to handle it, would not be able to control it, right? So he lives on that line, and that's how he coaches, and he has great success with it. Then there's, on the polar opposite side of that, is Tony Dungy, right? Tony Dungy shows almost no emotion throughout a game. Obviously, wild success as a head coach in his style of coaching. And, won a Super Bowl and a lot of success from that standpoint, and showing probably little emotion. And that's his philosophy. So do you advise people and try to help them figure out like where are they in these spectrums that help them to be the best that they can be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you were talking about, Hurley and everything. So, what I do with my players is, we talk about this before, but just to kind of jump to the end of it, before games, before practices, I'll walk around, I'll ask my players, what's their number? And so we assign a hype number for them between 1 and 10.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
Right. And so again, it's awareness. So if they're aware that, hey, I'm kind of a chill guy, I need to be like at a lower hype level, a 4, to be able to compete at my best. Am I at a 4 right now? Like, am I at a 1? Am I ready to fall asleep? Or am I like so hyped up because of who we're playing or what I'm putting the onus on the game is about, right? I need to bring that back down. And then if you have somebody else who's higher, like a Hurley, who's like a 7 or 8, if he's not at a 7 or 8, he's at a 2, he's not operating at his full capacity. Right. So being able to teach them, where are you at your best for performance? Right. Where do you fall on that spectrum? What number? And then having them to start gain awareness of where they're actually at themselves, it goes a long way.
That's phenomenal. I wrote that down immediately.
I heard Coach Saban talked about, this process with his guys at Alabama, right? Like, look, most of his roster is 5 stars, 4 stars, right? Like the highest of the highs. But there were days when those 5 stars were at a 2-star, right? So he kind of gave it like a star thing. Same with like your number. It was like, hey, but if this guy's a 5-star, but right now he's at like 3. But every guy, someone on the roster is going to be at a 5-star caliber. Find that guy within practice and let him, hey, I'm at like a 3-star right now. Like, we got to go, right? Like, help pick me up and kind of move along. Same type of thing. I love it. I wrote it down as well. The hype number. Like, look, even like I'll go in the weight room today. Hey man, what's your number? Like, are you here? Like, are you ready to go to work out today? Or are you just like punching the clock to get through it and make sure your attendance is on the wall?
Well, you're talking about what hype level is, what they need to be at to succeed, right? So that's level of, so like if Hurley needs to be at a 7 or 8, emotion to like rational kind of levels, whereas a kid who's chilled and like needs to be completely calm is at a 2, or Tony Dungy's at a 2. Right. You need to know whether you're out of your range, right? If you're at a 2 and all of a sudden you're walking around as an 8, you're probably not going to be good, right? And if you're an 8 and you're walking around as a 2, you're probably not going to be good. I'm curious with coaches, because athletes, I think I can communicate that pretty quickly, help them assess who they are, because I think that's one area once you talk to athletes, like they kind of like, I know even with the kids with the youngest kids I coach, like my son's kids, those kids, like I know kids who say, "Hey, coach, I can't handle being yelled at," right? And then I know kids who like literally like don't do anything until you yell at them. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, then you yell at them, and they're out of this world, and you're like, "Oh my god!" Like I hate, hate having to be like, So, as a coach, other coaches and players react to them, right? Is it important for a head coach and their assistants to be able to communicate to other people? This is how I coach. This is how, like, you're going to see me like this on practice day. You're going to see me like this on game day. This is what it means. So when you see me this way, you don't get alarmed if I'm really, really hyped, right?
Yeah.
You don't get alarmed if I'm the other way, like comatose, like
See, I've gotten that.
Today, is he sick? Like, is there something wrong with him?
See, Dave, I've gotten that, right? Because I'm so high intense, like during practice, and then on Friday night, it's like the total opposite of like, hey, I'm just like here. No high, no, you know what I mean? Like I show very little emotion, right? Where it's like, hey, like, Monday through Thursday at practice, you're like a lunatic, like, all over it in the best of ways. But now on game day, you flip the switch. Because for me, right, like as a player, I needed to operate in that high hype world, 8 to 10, right? But as a coach, I need to be like 3-4 on game day in order to like make it happen. So I think that's that's something that people need to adjust to. Not only your players, but like other coaches around you, or even administrators or parents kind of look at it like, why are you not like losing your mind today?
I think you have to communicate that when you interview, like
100%. Like this is who I am.
Administrators don't, athletic directors, in high schools, principals or superintendents, in college, athletic directors, presidents, vice presidents, they're going to show up at your events. And if they don't know, when you interview and you need to explain, this is my personality, this is who I am. I do think you have to explain that, because it's not asked a lot. I can tell you that every interview, no one's ever asked me,
what's your temperament?
I wish I had this conversation around with Craig when I interviewed for jobs, because now going forward, which will probably stop me from ever getting a job, but I'm going to communicate kind of how I am. Okay. Because you know what? Then there's no surprises. You know what I mean?
And that's the problem.
That is the problem, because if you meet me or someone meets you, Derek, or meets you, Craig, and like if you meet me when we're at dinner and we're having a good time, like that's one part of my personality. Okay. You meet me on game day, I am crazy hyped. Like that's how I am.
Yep.
Like I'm a hyped person. I coach like I played. Okay.
Intense.
So which is different. Like Derek coaches a different style. I coach like I played. Okay. So if you're an administrator and you see that, you I'm more like Hurley style, I guess I would say. I'm not as at profanity level, like, college would be. But as far as like intense, I was intense as a player. I was, I'm an intense coach, right? And so, but as in practice, I would say I'm mid-level. Like I'm only intense if something needs to be emphasized, other than a business like, so that's just my approach. That's how my mind works.
Right.
Okay.
And it works. It's successful.
It works, but it doesn't always work for everybody around you.
Well, that's, I think, part of where assistants come into it.
You've got to, I think when you hire assistants and correct me if I'm wrong, when you hire assistants, when you talk to administrators, I think that's actually questions that administrators should ask. And I think that assistants, when they apply for jobs, should ask head coaches, more what are style. Because I am flabbergasted at how often people are surprised by my style per se, or another person's style. Like I've coached with guys that are assistants too, that are like don't even say a word in practice and are
And then
lunatics in the
game
game, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know he was a lunatic. Like, but if
Yeah.
he told me, hey, like in practice, I just need to absorb everything that's going on. Like
Right.
I realized, oh my God, this guy's just absorbing what's going on, trying to learn everything at the same. And then in the game, he's like over the top, right? And I think that those things, the more it's communicated, the better it is, because that way people know what to expect, including players, right? Because players need to know what they expect. That's the one thing I've always communicated that to my players. I think most of the time my players have understood that, but I think coaches have a hard time because they don't always know what to expect if they're expecting something in their head and then they see something different. Administrators definitely. Like my thing to administrators is do not come on the sideline unless you're prepared to be shocked. Like do not come on the sideline. Like that's like, unless you, and then not just like me as a coach. I mean, your assistants, like, like how they might talk, like you shouldn't be standing there unless you're preparing yourself to be shocked, because games are emotional. And having been a person that like runs my own club, when I watch other coaches, like when I'm watching a game and I'm not coaching it, I mean, I look comatose. Like I'm cheering, but I'm not like, I'm excited for them when they win, but I'm kind of calm. I'm observing more than I am anything else, right? Talk about your thoughts on those kind of things, because I think that's something that's less talked about and more need to be talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So couple of things. So as let's start higher up. As an administrator, when we were hiring coaches, we were going through interview process. One of my questions always was to every candidate, what are you like on the sidelines? Is it different from when you practice and you coach? Because if they can define that, then it also allows us, one, holds them accountable, like, hey, like this is who you said you were. If we hire them, this is who you said you were, right? And you don't seem to be that way. But it also allows us to help them, right? Like, okay, you said you were this way, like you seem to be losing your mind a ton. Like, what's the
right?
This
is not what you said you were. Right. This is not what you said you were.
Yeah.
Right? You said you were a cool, calm, collective guy. Now I see you. Now we're like, we're breaking headsets here and like, we're doing, whatever. Like we're yelling at, like, we're yelling at referees. Like, what do we, like, I understand that. It's something for me personally that it was an adjustment, because you're going from player to coach. Right.
Yep.
And now, like, some guys can't ever take that away, or they can't do what Dave does and harnesses that like intensity and high octane player mentality and can do it as a coach, right? I'm not saying that I couldn't do it. For me to get the best, I need to be cool. I have to be cool, calm, collective, and I've always expressed that.
And there are times, most of the game, if you would watch me, 95% of the game, I'm fairly calm. But
absolutely,
like for me, like there are moments when some of the stuff in my opinion, like is needed, right? There are times when you have to like get guys.
Absolutely.
So, but that's my personality. There are coaches that, if you watch them,
for me,
the whole game, it doesn't matter if it's a big part of the game, a low part of the game, they're always the same. And that's their personality. You know what I mean? Right. But, like, I think what you said is true, like holding them accountable. I think ADs, and you could probably speak this better than anybody, ADs have to know what they're okay with. Mm-hmm. Right?
Absolutely.
You should know
what the school is okay with, right? Like, or what the culture of the building and the town is, or the campus is, right? Like, look, there are schools, irregardless of how good Dan Hurley is as a coach, there are places that aren't going to hire him.
They're not going to take him.
Look, Lane Kiffin.
He ain't coaching at Harvard.
Right, like the Lane train ain't going to work at some places, right? Or even a Nick Saban ain't going to work at some places. Like sometimes this is a Jim Harbaugh ain't going to work at some places.
Jim Harbaugh's a great example because
right?
Jim Harbaugh in football is as much of a wild card as you would get if you looked at the sidelines. Meaning,
I mean, he's in the NFL and he's still
he's
his
super
quarterback
high,
before
super
the
low.
you know?
Yeah, he's super high, he's super low. You know what I mean? Like then he's in between for a long time. You watch him, it's wild. But I think that's a great point. Like AD wise too. Like you probably know like what you're comfortable, what Craig is comfortable with, and that way because you have to explain it to your administrators. You have to say, hey, this is my philosophy, right? This is my philosophy with my coaches. I'm okay with this. I'm not okay with this. And then administrator says to you, right? Like, hey, I thought you said you're not okay with this, right? And this person's doing this over and over again. You know, are you going to talk to him about it? Right. And then it's very, because I guess it goes, it's not, but this isn't really only about, because the guy could have great values, but be excitable. A guy could have great values and be comatose. It's also about demeanor and what you feel the program should look like to the outside, right? Like LSU is, Lane Kiffin's a great example. He was wildly successful at Ole Miss, which is kind of buttoned up, okay, as far as they're very conservative. He's going to LSU, which is not buttoned up at all as far as like the fan base, right? And so it's a different culture from that standpoint. He could be wildly successful at both, two completely different types of places. As to kind of how they one had Ed Orgeron, who walks around with his shirt off half the time and won a national championship, might have also been fired for the same thing where he was almost too over the top at some point. They liked over the top, but then he became too over the top, right? Yeah. You know, like
Dave,
like,
I have a quick question when it comes to that itself for Craig. Craig, in that, right? Is the way you view, even, you know, you have a foundation of what's accepting for you as the athletic director or as the school. Does that change in regards to what sport?
So for me, like I was at a small private school, and so that was not going to change for the sport. It was still came down to like he's either or she's either a fit here or she's not. And
like I was just curious, like do you want that high intensity over the top football coach where if now we're talking baseball, I want the laid back comatose type of does that matter?
We weren't averse to like having one or the other.
Right.
It was just a matter, like, do we feel like, okay, is that high intensity player still, like, as coach, is that coach still getting the best out of their players with compassion, understanding, and empathy? Like that was our biggest thing, right? Because you can have a high level coach who's just an a-hole and doesn't really, I'm above everybody else kind of thing. Like that's not a fit for us.
And then how much does that play into when we're talking men's and women's sports?
Right. And so that's
because we see some like, look, man, like there are some women's basketball coaches that I would be like, I want to play for her, right? Like, holy shit, like, she's no nonsense, like, let's rock and roll, and so I just, especially having a daughter, right? And then obviously, like, I had a sister that played high level, college basketball, right? Like, to just see kind of how those things go about it, right? Whether it's a male or a female coach, right? Because, I've seen really high level, girls basketball coaches, who are men or who are women, or, you know what I mean? Like, and now we're seeing a lot of more women get into the football world. And, how much does that really play a role? I mean, I look at like Dave's sister, who was an incredible track athlete. Like she could be out there coaching and she's intense. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's how she coaches, but those are some of those things that as an athletic college.
So
Yeah.
Right.
I
Like,
think
you know what I'm saying? Like that demeanor.
whatever level
I think,
you're at,
is
whatever
important.
level you're at as a coach, I think that the successful coaches still do the two things. They still are able to get their players individually from where they are now to where they want to be. They get their team from where they are now to where the team wants to be, and they build trust. And if they don't have that trust of the players, then that screaming or that whatever level they're at.
Don't mean shit.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing is where you're getting them to, the values you have, and
I think
your
more
investment.
athletic directors
Your,
need to ask
well,
those
your
questions.
investment in them, your investment in them as a player, and what helping them to succeed. It's a team and individual thing. Like it's funny when people say to me, like, it's all about the team. I say that's true, but I say it's true, but you don't have the team without investing in individuals. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're not investing in the individuals that make the team up, and you just make it about everybody should form what around for the team. When people say sacrifice the team, what does sacrifice mean? Like, it means like you have to help the individual understand what their journey is. So when they're sacrificing for the team, they understand what their individual journey within the team is. And that's always been a thing that's really important for me. It's one of those things that when I've been an assistant, I always looked for that as a guy that I was going to work for as a head coach, that they were focused on making sure that the individuals succeed within the team and having that opportunity. And I think that was always important, because when if I wasn't a head coach, because I know that was my values as a head coach, but as an assistant, you can't always control what goes on because you're not in charge. But if I knew that was, the fundamental underlying thing with the head coach, then I knew that I would be on board with pretty much the majority of what was going on, win, lose, or draw, right? And obviously most of the times they won, but win, lose, or draw, because of the fact that I was on board with the fact that this person was trying to help the individuals to succeed. And I think that's an important thing in teams. I think coaches miss that sometimes too, because there's some great coaches miss it, because they're focused everything on the team, and they might be winning games, but there's collateral damage along the way, and that's the mental health part you're talking about.
Right.
If you're winning a lot of games and there's a ton of collateral damage at the bottom, then what to me are you really doing? What are you really doing? Because the only person you end up really serving in that aspect is yourself.
Yep.
You're only serving yourself, because your goal was to win, and you're creating collateral damage. And then there are some coaches who are, and it goes on both ends, non-fiery who are very caring, non-fiery who are horrible. Okay. Fiery who are very caring, fiery who are horrible. Right. So, but that to me is the underlying thing, is that, like, you help that individual, and exactly the ones who are like, and I've met some of these guys, been at a lot of coaches conferences, just like you have been and I would, like, sometimes guys who I would really admired from afar, and I would meet them and they would start talking, and I would be like, what a jerk this guy is. Like, what an absolute jerk. Like, yeah, he won a lot of ball games, and I use there's a great movie that explains this perfectly. It's the movie with James Van Der Beek, where the football movie, where Varsity Blues, the head coach who they kind of work out is kind of the epitome of the collateral damage, winning at all they have a statue built to him or whatever. And but all these kids have collateral damage, and that would be my example of the collateral damage coach along the way. Now, the other thing is that the unfortunate thing about coaching sometimes is there is some collateral damage, even when you're trying to do the right things, but coaches have to be able to recognize that and try to solve it as best that they can. There are unsolvable things. That's why the transfer portal exists in a crazy capacity in college, okay? Because there are guys doing the right things, and it's just unfortunate that this person's ahead of that person. He's the third stringer, and he's not going to play, right? And there is some collateral damage, and he might feel a certain way. But if the player walks away and says, hey, you know what, he was all right, that guy's all right, it's just, hey, I wasn't able to play, I wasn't going to get a chance, then that's not collateral damage, But if a guy said, hey, this guy put me in the game and, all week I couldn't practice, I was injured, and he threw me in there, yeah, that's collateral damage to me. So, but anyway, I want to let you run. We've took enough of your
Dave,
time.
I wanted to squeeze out. I wanted to squeeze out one more question. And Craig,
all right,
sorry,
Derek, you got it.
We've kept you for so long, but I did want to just ask this one thing in regards to athletic director and coaches timeline, right? Like, how long is too long to turn something around, to you bring a new guy in? Like, what is it? I know it's a loaded question, it's a tough one, right? But it's especially now where guys used to have a 2-3 year window to make things happen and change things, and now I feel like that window it's shrunk. You gotta, I'm sure there's steps to it, like there's no concrete answer, right? But like, as an athletic director looking at it, right, like, what is really like a general type of like, hey, here's your timeline, like, go.
For me, so obviously have been doing this for a long time. I think if you asked me this question 10 years ago, it would have been, it's roughly like a 5-year plan, right? You get your whole recruiting class in. There's no transfer portal. You're going through 4 years with the same guys, same players, same women.
Right.
And so you're trying
you get a freshman class through,
So you're trying to build it from there, right? So that's starting from scratch. You get a 5-year window, and I think if you're making moves towards getting to the championship game by your 4th or 5th year, then you've done a good job. I think now, even at a Division III level, there's so much emphasis on winning, which at a Division III level I don't agree with. Division II, like I get, NAIA I get, but it's so much shorter now. And there's no, like you said, there's no concrete number.
So it is a real thing. It is a real thing.
It is a massively real thing. There is a lot of pressure, and even ADs who like for me, the reason why I left, like I was a big culture guy. It's all about the experience, and if you can give these athletes the experience, the results are gonna flourish.
Right. And some people aren't like that. Yeah, they want wins and losses right now. Or some guy, like, how much money are you bringing in for us, right? Like, or what is our persona on social media? Like, are people are their eyes on us for, look, it might not be for wins and losses. It might not be for doing the right thing all the time, but like, do we have viewership? Are people in the stands?
Like, there's schools out there where you can be 500, but you know what? You have a 30-man roster as compared to like a 17-man roster 5 years ago, and your social media is blown up.
Right.
That's bringing in other students, not just athletes.
We talk about that with the private school, right, Dave? Like all the time, like everybody is just a number, right? Like you're a tuition, like that's what it is. And if I bring you in, do you bring 2 or 3 other kids, or do I get 5 more because of where you came from, or, what program I like? That stuff is a real thing, right? You see it now with guys, rather than have quality behind what they're putting out or really believe in what they're putting out, will just put it out because it'll get, likes or viewership or whatever that is. Like, it is a very changed. Would you say that's within the last 5-6 years, 3 years, 2 years? Like,
I'd say 5 years. I think once COVID came around, it really changed the game after COVID.
And do you see that only continuing, Craig, or do you see at some point it's going to be like, hey, we got to, rein it in a little bit, or you just think it's going to continue to just?
I think it's going to continue because it's still a name of the game for it's a business. It's no longer, it's no longer just for sports. It's a college business, right? And so what's going to make us money, that's what we're going to continue to do.
Even at the D3 level, because of people enrollment, right? Because colleges are struggling with enrollment.
So nobody wants to go away to school anymore because you can sit in your house and take all your classes, Dave. Like, nobody wants to go live in a dorm room, dude. It's more comfortable to be in mom and dad's basement and,
Exactly.
TikToking for money. Like,
look how many small Division III schools closed after COVID.
Right. And that's going to continue. I would assume that's going to continue. Like, that's why a lot of Division III schools have football, because they get 125 guys.
Yeah.
And it helps their enrollment, and they don't care
especially
if they
D3, where most of them are paying tuition.
D3. You cut deals with the students, so you can cut off this, 20,000 here or 20,000 there to get them into school. And it's usually a small school with a nice small school environment. And you get them to come there, and you get 120, 130 football players. That's 120 paying customers that are going through. I mean, that's the way it is at school now. And but yeah, I agree. Listen, I mean, I teach myself physics on ChatGPT. I literally, like, I didn't take no physics classes. I taught myself physics. So I mean, most people would try to do more fun stuff than that, but that's
hey, buddy. Whatever works, dude. Look, I know you can say really tough names, dude, and whether you use ChatGPT to figure out how to say the name right. Like, look, there's a ton of stuff that I use it to
teach myself stuff, the things that I would never know. Like, I don't have time to go and sit in front of a physics book, so I go and have them teach it.
Look,
and each day gives me problems, and I learn physics
through the guests we've had on our podcast, right? Like, the networking and the learning and the eye-opening of things that we've heard guys talk about, whether it be how they run their programs or, this little tidbit or that tidbit. I mean, it's why Dave's always you see my head down. It's because I take notes on every podcast we have and have an array of just sheets of paper writing things down about the things that we've learned through just having general conversation with guys about whatever topic we're talking about or whatever their quote expertise is in that world. And it's vice versa. Guys have come back to us and sent us messages or emails about, hey man, like, we had this conversation, we talked about it, and like, now I've gone and used it, and here's what it is. I think that's one thing that social media, the positive of it is it allows you to kind of connect with people you would have never talked to, or talk about things that you never would have even known existed had you only stayed in your little protective bubble of us here in New Jersey, right? Like, but no, like, it's a great tool. Craig, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, man. Like, it's really been awesome. Really appreciate you coming on and taking the time. Let our viewers kind of know if they want to reach out to you or look for your services or whatever, kind of, how can they find you, and where are you located?
Thanks for having me on. And the best way to reach out to me is Instagram is kind of my main thing, where it's at Coach Craig Kolek, CraigKolek, and a lot of good information for coaches, parents, athletes, just trying to help as much as I can with information to help everybody grow. It also helps me because I'll get comments and a lot of conversations where I'm able to put out new stuff based off of conversations that parents are asking or kids are asking and stuff like that. So definitely reach out if you have any questions. Would love to have conversations. And thanks for having me on, guys. This was awesome.
Appreciate it.
Great having you on, Craig. Really, really a pleasure. And we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Great podcast. That was great. He's awesome. That guy's awesome.
Wealth of not like, there's just something to be said, dude, for guys that have been in those positions. You know what I mean? Like, look, kind of like your sister, right? Like athletic director, smaller school, sure had opportunities to go to a bigger, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, those guys that have been in it, like boots on the ground, was a collegiate volleyball coach. Like, dude, for some reason, we've had this volleyball thing, like the last couple of guests have all been like they're linked to volleyball at some point, right? Like, and I didn't even, like, that's not even something that I knew before we even went to the research, but but a lot of those guys, like, you know what I mean? Like, just really like a guy you would want to work for, right? Like, understands the process, like, you look and knew what he was about, right? Like, I was a culture guy. I wanted the kids to be able to, the experiences and this and that. And right. Like, and he knew that was his niche, you know what I mean? And said, like, I got out of it because I didn't want to have to like base things off wins and losses or whatever it was that was coming down from the top, right? The thing I took away the most is like self-awareness, whether it be player, coach. You got to know who you are, what you are, and then continue to work and change things and tweak it and get better as you move forward. So a lot of really good information when it comes to, you know, how do you build that off the field culture in order to create success?
No doubt. I can't even keep up with cutting up all these things. I'm like cutting it up because like the algorithm, if I put all like 10 clips up at once, like they don't get as much traction. But if I drip them, it gets a lot of traction. You know, like some of these are getting thousands of thousands of views. So,
so I think our live viewership is going up too, right? Like, I mean, I don't know if
it dipped. It's honestly,
I don't know if it's like seasonal. Like if we tracked it, like it's more seasonal, right? Like
is less, believe it or not.
Of course, yeah. I mean, look, even guest wise,
football. People are watching football.
But even guest wise, right? Like guys, just like availability becomes like a really tough thing, right? And now, you know, postseason, like these guys are willing to like, right? Like now it's like floodgates. Like, hey, coach, I know we talked back when, but season's over now. Let's go and, you know, do this or talk here or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
So
I wonder,
the views like now to like I would say midsummer.
Yeah,
it literally football season is almost like slower in the sense that like people can get any clip they want. Like I'm talking from the short side too, so not just the coach's side, but they can get any clip they want because football's being played. So there's endless clips, right? But out of season, there's not as many things. So people want stuff. And I'm not just talking about football, but other sports too. And it's just like basketball. I get more traction with basketball clips and stuff like that out of season than in season. So it's kind of weird. But yeah,
because in season guys are so like.
Well, you could go watch it. You could put it on your TV and watch. You can't watch as much football outside of the football season. So when we have guests, you know what I'm saying, they're getting their, for lack of a better word, they're getting, yes, exactly. So, all right, I'll talk to you later, and we'll go back tomorrow, right? With who?
Yeah, we're back tomorrow. Tomorrow with Coach Kinsey from South Bend, Indiana, 11 a.m. because we're working Central Time, but. I got our head coach from Indiana. Like I said, I'm trying to drill all 50 states, get a head high school football coach from all 50 states. We're at 20 something right now. So we're almost halfway there.
Good. Awesome, dude. Awesome. All right. Have a great day, man.
All right, buddy. Stay warm. No snow in Central Jersey, buddy.
No, but it is cold.
It's only going to get colder, dude.
I know. All right.
We're talking the coldest it's ever been pre-Christmas.
I know.
That's why you're playing basketball indoors, buddy. You're okay.
Yep. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.